Professor Costello, it's Anna, and welcome to my reading response journals. For this semester, I decided that I wanted to do something really creative and something that integrated another passion of mine, which is videography. I've been vlogging my life since I was like 12 years old, so I felt like I had enough footage where I could pick a quote from each of the readings and relate it somehow to something that's occurred in my life. Along with that, I also have screenshots of all the homework assignments that we had to do for the group presentations. And yeah, I hope you enjoy, and thanks for watching. Bye!
This first passage reminded me of my time in Florida this past winter break. I was there for work and was staying in a retirement area. My hotel was next to the village square, and even late at night it would still be lively, filled with retired folks making the most of their lives. This quote really reminded me of the people I encountered during my time there. This quote made me reflect on my goals for when I grow up. I'm spending my entire early 20s working towards a goal of becoming a doctor, my only occupational goal I've ever had since I was 10. And it's a goal that I've centered the rest of my life on, and reading this section made my thoughts feel very heavy, because I was so blown away by what I was feeling based on what I've based my future occupations on. This section was a good reminder that I have more to live for in life than this mundane plan I've set for myself. I don't know if it was just reading this book or class or reflecting on all the traveling I've done this year, but everything has reminded me of my impermanence. I'm showing the sunset from a flight that I've took recently, and seeing the vast sky and all the little houses and streets you see from a bird's eye view. It's amazing, truly being aware of your existence. Our families and our friends, and basically anyone we choose to surround ourselves with, become a major influence on our lives, and this quote truly reminded me of that factor. It reminded me that we are truly, at the end, in charge of who we become. We can be born into certain circumstances, but with the right motivation, we can grow out of it and create our own lives. When I was working in the emergency room in Florida, I was working with this one doctor who mentioned his story about how he was working in New York and he had a patient that was coming from jail, and he had this life-threatening illness. But the doctor said, but since he's a bad guy, he'll survive. He mentioned this story because he saw this patient earlier that had a life-threatening illness as well, and she was surrounded by her family, and they were telling stories about how she was a part of the PTA, and she did all these amazing things, but unfortunately she was definitely going to die very soon. Stories like these make me question if karma is really true, prior to knowing what karma actually was. It's hard for me not to get involved with politics because of the current state of the world. This is going to affect my future, my children's future, and their children's future. It's scary what's going on in our country today. Oftentimes, I like to get information and relief from political comedy shows such as John Oliver, Stephen Colbert, and Trevor Noah. Recently, John Oliver came back from a brief hiatus and started talking about the Trump administration and 4 questions he had, including why do people listen to Trump, why do they follow him, and where is Trump getting his facts from. I found this segment very important because it was able to voice my concerns and opinions in a comedic way. My grandma is 96. That's a hell of a long time to be alive for. She's outlived her husband, my grandfather, and when he passed I was about 9 and didn't really understand what death truly was. I was also on vacation in Hawaii, so I couldn't even attend his funeral. I was his favorite grandchild because we shared the same birthday, so I've always felt really guilty for not being able to make it. So now I make it a point to visit my grandmother every year during spring break. We've gone for the past 3 consecutive years, and I'm so grateful for that. At some point in our readings, we learned about how people are reborn multiple times, and I felt that this quote represented how I felt growing up, especially in these past 2 years in college. I feel that every time I grow out of a phase, I constantly am being reborn into a new person, and I'm learning things that will prolong the life I'm trying to achieve. A happy one. I've included clips from my freshman year till now to just show the progression of how much I've changed physically, and with that, mentally. An obviously big major theme in Buddhism is that attachment is bad, and that we must detach ourselves from materialistic things if we want to succeed. I feel that as a teenager, I've grown up believing that materials equated happiness, and I've spent more money than I can count on food and clothes and things that I don't really need. This quote reminded me of how unimportant materialistic things are to our lives. I took any mention of light in this book as a metaphor for those in my life that I love, for those in my life that make me a better person and illuminate the darkness that sometimes fills my life. This quote reminded me of how special these people are for me and how important it is for me to cherish and love them, because I would be otherwise nowhere without them. And whether or not these people have been in my life since I was 12 or 18, they are the reason why I have light in my life. Because of the diction used in this quote, it made me think of my own mom, who is my clear light, who purifies my life by offering me guidance and assistance in times where my life is dark and twisty. I know this is not exactly what this quote meant, but I couldn't help but think about my mom being a light source in my life to help me when times get tough. I stood at the Griffith Observatory in LA and was incredibly amazed not only by the view, but how tiny I felt at that moment. I realized my permanence again and existence at that moment as I looked at all the tiny windows where people lived their lives. I looked at all the cars driving by on their way to their destination, and by doing this, I was reminded of how little my life was to the 7 billion people in the world. A feeling came over me that made me almost want to cry, because I was so overwhelmed by this feeling I haven't felt in so long. The first time I've been out of the country in years was to go to Vancouver, Canada. Not the furthest trip, but it was definitely a milestone for me. It marked my first trip independently, along with my best friend, and my first trip out of the country by myself. We went to the Vancouver Lookout our first day there during sunset, and oh my goodness, was it beautiful. This quote reminded me of my time there because this trip taught me a lot about myself and how I am able to care for myself, which I think is an important teaching. I was so scared to go on this trip, but being up there made me feel fearless and like I had all the freedom in the world. I've had 2 major deaths that have hit me in my life, my mom's dad and my father's mom. Both of their deaths were really different. My grandpa died at home in his sleep, and my grandmother died in a rehab facility secondary to emphysema. I hope that when my time comes to die, I die like my grandfather, around an environment full of people that I love. Netflix released a new show entitled 13 Reasons Why, which is based off a young adult novel of the same name, and it is basically about this girl named Hannah Baker and these tapes that she makes about 13 people and why they compelled her to kill herself. The show has had a lot of debate on the accuracy of its portrayal of mental health, etc. However, the part of this quote that said dying was by no means easy, in fact it was very hard work, reminded me of the show because it takes place over the course of almost a year. A year of this girl feeling lonely and sad and wanting to do something about it but can't, because she doesn't want to experience the consequence of death, because it is hard work to kill yourself. Hannah's suicide scene is actually shown very graphically in a way to make you feel uncomfortable, because it shouldn't be romanticized, and this quote really reminded me of that important fact. My best friend's name is also Anna. We used to hate each other growing up, and never would I have thought that my sworn enemy would become my best friend. When we got to high school, we became best friends. Carolyn Weiss's section about how we can have more than one soul contract and how we meet people at different points in our lives to teach us about ourselves truly reminded me of my friendship with Anna. She's made me a better person in so many ways, so when Carolyn Weiss was talking about different soul contracts in your friends, it definitely reminded me of her. This was a 2-minute meditation exercise that we had to do, and to be honest, it honestly just made me sleepy as well as frustrated because I wasn't reaching the level of relaxation and wisdom that I hoped I would have. I wanted to get a good experience out of meditating, and the feeling of counting my breath just made me irritated. This was the first year I was able to buy my mom proper gifts, so I surprised her with a bag on Christmas and her birthday. Sadly, I accidentally deleted the video of her receiving the bag on her birthday, but she was in tears, and I was so happy that I was able to surprise her with something like this. I also treated my entire family out to dinner that very same night, much to the shock and joy of my parents. Being first generation to parents of immigrants, I feel that I owe them a lot for making the sacrifice that they did to make a better life for me. So I decided I would spend my mom's birthday as if it was her last day by showering her in things that I know she wished she could have.